Everyone.
Waalaikumsalam.
My name is Ili Shafika and I will proceed presenting the next issue. So the next issue is whether the prosecution can tender the genital pain suffered by Nelly as circumstantial evidence to corroborate and support Nelly's complaint. So we refer to the case Ahmad Faizal Ali bin Aulad Ali and others against public prosecutor. So in this case, the complainant was a student aged 19 years old. And she was raped by her boyfriend and other two men who is her boyfriend's friends. So the trial judge, who is the judge in the High Court, relied on the evidence given by the medical doctor, where the results of the examination on the complainant shows that the victim had pain her pubic area as the vulva was swollen and painful when touched as a result of the penetration of blunt and hard objects such as a male organ. Further, the medical report also stated that there were several tears in victim's hymen in her vagina. Next slide. Furthermore, in the English case R against Seals, the court in this case illustrates a few evidence that the prosecution is possible to tender in a sexual case, namely in the case of rape. Firstly is medical evidence that the accused had sexual intercourse within an hour, also prior to the medical examination. Secondly, by other independent evidence that the defendant and no other man had been with her during that time. And lastly, that the time the victim under clothing was torn and that she had injuries to her private parts as corroboration evidence. So the three items that I mentioned above can corroborate the complainant's evidence. So for the application, as Nelly found she was naked and felt pain in her genitals, as well as the presence of semen that was still sticky in and around her genitals. Thus, the pain in the genitals suffered by Nelly can be inferred that there was a tears in Nelly's hymen in her vagina as a result of the penetration of a blunt and hard object, such as male organ. Furthermore, the condition of both accused, which is Halim and Ah Chong, who were found naked in the hotel room, infers that only both of the accused and no other man had been with her during that time. So next slide. So the next issue is whether the prosecution can adduce the presence of semen as circumstantial evidence to corroborate Nelly's complaint. So refer to the case public prosecutor against Rushidi Okipi Harun. So in this case, the complainant, aged 30 years old at that time when the alleged offence of statutory rape was committed, the court held that the detected semen which matched the DNA profiling of the accused found at the crime scene is among medical evidence which can corroborate the evidence of complainant in sexual case. Furthermore, the court in the case Suharman bin Muhammad Noor, Elias Ismail against public prosecutor, the court held that the corroboration comes in the form of DNA profiling report is very capable of belief. Next slide. So for the application, the fact shows that the semen found that was still sticky in and around Nelly's genitals. Thus, the prosecution may conduct DNA test of the said semen to match the DNA profiling of both accused. Furthermore, the condition of Halim and Ah Chong were naked at that time, and no other man had been with Nelly during that time, raised inference that the DNA could match one of the two accused or both of the accused. So next slide. So the next issue is whether the prosecution can tender the evidence of CCTV recording in the Hilton Hotel, which captures the incident to support the prosecution case. So we refer to the Section 3 of the Evidence Act that defines CCTV recording is falls within the definition of document. Furthermore, explanation 3 to Section 62 provides that any document that produced by a computer is regarded as a primary evidence. And furthermore, the admissibility of computer output is also established under Section 90A, 90B, and 90C, where 90A provides that it requires that the production of the printout from the document, it must be in the course of its ordinary use. Furthermore, Section 90B focus on the weight to be attached to a document or statement in a document emitted under Section 90A. And lastly, Section 90C of the Evidence Act stated that this section prevails from other written law, where it implies that the admissibility of computer printouts in Malaysia under Section 90A and 90B shall be determined under Evidence Act only and not by any other written laws. Next slide. So in the case public prosecutor against Muhammad Abdul Aziz bin Ibrahim, the court held that CCTV recording in the form of hard disk is a computer-generated document. For the application, the fact shows that the Hilton Hotel is fully equipped with the CCTV cameras. As we know that the purpose of the said CCTV cameras is general surveillance to detect undesirable activities. And when they occur and something happened and the public authorities want to know what happened on that time, they can refer back to the recording of the CCTV cameras. So by relying the main purpose of the CCTV, the prosecution may tender the evidence of CCTV recording. Next slide. So the next issue is whether opinion of the expert witness can be called to affirm and support the evidence of CCTV recording in the Hilton Hotel, which captures the incident. So first thing first, in order for the prosecution to produce computer-generated document for the admissible as evidence, they must fulfill the condition governed under Section 90, Subsection 1 of the Evidence Act, where the document was produced by the computer and it was produced in the course of its ordinary use. And followed by the ways to prove that the document was produced in the course of its ordinary use, pursuant to Section 98, Subsection 2, the prosecution may produce a certificate signed by the person who is responsible for the management of the operation of that computer, and further, they can call the expert witness. Next slide. So under Section 45 of Evidence Act, it provides the evidence produced by expert witness is admissible. It assists the court to arrive at the right decision about an issue which is beyond the common knowledge and experience of a judge. So refer to the case Azila Hadari against public prosecutor, where this case is concerned about the controversial murder of Atantunya Sharibu. So in this case, the first respondent, a police inspector, was tasked with patrolling the area where Baginda's house was located. Baginda is the one who had affair with Atantunya Sharibu. Baginda told the first respondent where Atantunya stayed in a hotel, accompanied by Siru, who is Azila's colleague on that time, went to the hotel but could not find Atantunya. So the respondent's visit to the hotel was recorded on the hotel CCTV system, which was used against them at the trial, and the court accepted the hotel CCTV security system as fortified by the witness who forensically identified the two images as those of the two respondents. Next slide.
Okay, presenter. I think most of our friends understand about this CCTV's law, CCTV's evidence, how it become admissible. So can you summarize how many types of evidence to support the prosecution case against both Halim and Ah Chong? In summary, how many?
Okay, thank you, sir. So first thing first, we focus on the corroboration, and every evidence that we want to tender, the prosecution want to tender must be corroborate. So,
no, okay. Basically, your first evidence that going to be used is the witness, the victim herself.
Yes.
Okay,
the victim's complainant,
but must be corroborated by some other facts and other incidents. Okay, and then second evidence.
Second evidence is the expert witness.
Expert witness or
the expert witness.
Circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial, kan? I believe from your presentation slide, you highlight about circumstantial evidence.
Hello, Tuan.
Huh? Circumstantial evidence. Ada tak ada?
Ada, Tuan.
Ada?
Hello.
Ada, Tuan. Ada, Tuan.
Maaf ya,
No, the presenter. I just want to know whether you understand the slide that you read. I'm not looking at your reading. I just want to know whether you understand what you read. So
yes,
how many evidence that you are going to use to support your case against the accused?
So the CCTV camera recording.
Okay.
Okay, and then the presence of semen.
Okay.
And then the medical report.
Okay.
And then the witness available on that time, which is the security guard.
Okay.
And And last here is the subsequent conduct by Nelly, which is she making the companion to the police. She's lodged the police report after.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. With regard to the expert evidence, what kind of evidence that you are going to extract or you are going to use from the expert? Who are the experts? Who are the experts?
Who are the expert untuk apa? Tuan boleh minta maaf saya punya internet tak stabil.
Okay, you are using expert evidence, yeah, to support the case against accused, yeah. Okay, what kind of evidence that you?
For evidence dalam CCTV recording, CCTV.
No, expert,
Hello?
expert, yeah.
Dengar
Hello.
tak?
Apa nama presenter ni? Dengar ke? Okay, kawan-kawan lain bantu ya.
Maybe the expert witness that can be called is the expert witness who are expertise in matters of sexual related offences where matters where they can assess the genital injury, whether there is penetration or not, and also
Okay.
expert witness in the matter of forensic where they can assess whether the semen in the genitals belong to the accused.
Okay.
Other offences.
TV recording, yeah.
Yeah, yes, the CCTV recording.
CCTV recording. Okay, so medical. Okay, medical report. Okay, expert, eh? Okay. So, thank you. Please proceed with the next presenter.
Tuan, next question ke ataupun next evidence?
Ada lagi ke evidence lain yang you tak mention? Lagi?
Maybe the medical report. Perlu ke nak saya explain?
Okay, okay. Proceed medical report. Medical report.
Okay, in brief, is whether the prosecution can bring the medical report to support the prosecution's case. So, the relevant laws are Section 3B of the Evidence Act 1950, where the term document is considered all documents produced for the inspection of the court, where such documents are called documentary evidence, and Section 61 of the Evidence Act, where contents of document may be proved by primary. And next is Section 62 of the Evidence Act 1950, where the document itself produced for the inspection of the court. So these are the laws that is related to support the authority to prove medical report in courts. So the case that we use to support these provisions is the case of public prosecutor against Muhammad Ali bin Abang and others, and public prosecutor against Muhammad Rizwan bin Muhammad Borhan, where basically in this case it held that the medical report must coincide with what the victim had suffered, and the burden lies on the prosecution to prove that the medical report is coincide with what has suffered by the victim. And next, so we use the case of to support the above authorities. I use the case of Prabhakaran against public prosecutor and James against R, where corroborated evidence to support witness testimony is not limited only to oral testimony, but it can be used by established facts, which in the current case is the medical report. So in applying to the present issue, it can be said that the medical report can become corroborating evidence to support Nelly's testimony or Nelly's statement, because it is considered a documentary evidence. And since corroborated evidence for rape is not only limited to oral testimony, then the medical report is accepted by the court. So by having a solid and corroborating evidence of the medical report, it can assume that the injuries or what has been suffered by Nelly can be presumed as rape. And next. So this is basically what I've stated before, where the expert witness is can also be called to affirm the medical report, where I provided section 45, which has been mentioned before, where the opinions of expert can assist court to come to a decision, where I've used the case of Chandra Sekaran against private prosecutor, where science is given a liberal view, and I provided a case where what level of expert is needed. So basically, in the present issue, the level of expert that is needed is persons who are expert in matter of basically forensic matters, and also doctors that are very skillful or very knowledgeable in matters of sexual related offences. Next. So this is the application that I've stated before, that the expert witness to be called can assist the court to come to a decision, and also since they are very knowledgeable and very expertise in their work, they can assess the situation of Nelly on whether the semen and the injury on her genitals can be conclude as an act of there was an act of rape. So basically, expert witness can be called to assist the court. So that's for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is the first question. Okay, second question. Okay, before we move to the next question, whether you can prove prima facie case against Halim and Achong. Do you this team, do you agree with me, or can you give your opinion? Let's say someone come to you and says that she has been raped by someone else. So what is your first advice to her? Anyone? Hello?
Or maybe we can tell her to go make a police report immediately.
Make a police report immediately, or
go to the hospital, sorry.
Go to the hospital first, yeah? Okay, go to the hospital. Like this, yeah? For any sexual offense or victims, they need to go to hospital first. Better to go to hospital, either public hospital or private hospital. So from there, when the doctors make an inquiry, basically the victim will inform to the doctors that I have been raped by someone else, let's say Halim and Achong, and then can you check on my private part? And after the doctor make investigation, very thorough checks on the private part, then the doctor will make a report to the police. That is the duty of the doctor who undergone the witness, I mean the victim. Okay. Next presenter. Question 2.
Can you hear my voice?
Can you put your mic near to your mouth? Okay.
Okay.
So that I can hear you very clear. Okay, thank you, Nur Hafiza.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Hafiza binti Azmota. Now we will proceed to the second question. Where do you think the prosecution can prove a prima facie case against Halim and Achong? Okay, next slide. So the issue in this question is whether there is a prima facie case by the prosecution against Halim and Achong under section 375 of the Penal Code, which amounted to the offence of rape. So in examining the credibility of every evidence standard by the prosecution in this case, the test of maximum evaluation test will be used. By that, a prima facie case may be determined, and the evidence produced on part of the prosecution may be examined attentively. Next slide.
So next is about the maximum evaluation test mentioned by the presenter before. where in the criminal procedure code is mentioned in section 173, subsection F1 and 2, where the prosecution had to adduce credible evidence which proved that the ingredients of the offense, which is in this case the offense of rape, and if it is unrebutted, it would amount to conviction for the accused. So based on this provision, I had come out with two cases to support. Firstly, on the case of BP against On Cheng Hyong, where the the maximum evaluation test was applied on the evidence, where it is to determine a prima facie case and it does not combine with the standard of beyond reasonable doubt. And secondly, based on the case of Louis Ko Chai against BP, where it is also applied, the court also applied a maximum evaluation test to determine prima facie case. And all the evidence which was adduced by the prosecution shall be examined rigorously. Next.
Okay, next, based on the case of Ahmad Faizal Ali bin Aulad Ali and others against by the prosecutor, there are 4 elements that can be fulfilled to establish a prima facie case under the offense of rape. So the first element is there must be sexual intercourse between the accused and the victim. Second one, there must be a penetration. And the third one, there must be a sexual intercourse must happen between without the accused consent. And the fourth, the accused and the victim must not be legally married. Next slide. So for the first element is on the matter of there must be sexual intercourse between the accused and also the victim. So based on section 375 of the Penal Code, it mentions that the element of sexual intercourse need to be happen between a man and also a woman in order to constitute a rape. So it must be between a man who committed the rape offense against a woman by having a sexual intercourse without her will or consent. So the sexual intercourse here may be defined as a penetration that is sufficient to represent rape. In the case of R and Mayberry, it was held that a sexual intercourse is said to be happen and continue as long as there is a penetration between the victim and also the accused. While the penetration happened in the case of R and Jordan, highlighted that a slight penetration is sufficient and it is not important to prove a hymen of a woman is ruptured as a result of the penetration that happened. Thus, from here we can see that the element of sexual intercourse occurred as soon as there is a penetration. Next slide. So in applying the elements of rape and also the maximum evaluation test with the situation of the question, so under the element of there must be a sexual intercourse between the accused and also the victim, it can be said that there is a sexual intercourse happen between Nelly, Halim and also Ah Chong. This is based on the evidences adduced by the prosecution, which are the first evidence is the presence of semen in the form of DNA test. So based on the evidence of the presence of semen that was still sticky around her genitals and also in her genitals in the form of DNA test, it may corroborate the evidence of Nelly making a police report which stated that she had been raped by the two accused. So the presence of the semen is as a circumstantial evidence may give a logical reference to the fact that a sexual intercourse had happened between Nelly, Halim and also Ah Chong, and her police report may be supported. So if there is no presence of the semen or the DNA test made on it, so the police report made by Nelly cannot be corroborated by another evidence to make it much stronger and credible, which then may constitute to the element of sexual intercourse between Nelly, Halim and Ah Chong cannot be proved. So in the case of PP against Imran Nasir, it stated about a law on corroboration evidence of the victim in a sexual offense is normally required. So when a corroboration evidence was adduced with the complainant's evidence, then it will be accepted as having established the case against an accused. So in order for the evidence to be said as corroborative in a sexual offences case or rape case, the evidence must be important in respect of the accused evidence that intercourse took place without her consent, that it was a defendant who committed the offence. Thus, under this evidence, the presence of semen in DNA formed as a corroborative evidence to Nelly's police report may be a credible evidence on part of the prosecution against Halim and also Ah Chong. So next slide. Then based on the same element of rape and maximum evaluation test, but in applying it to the next evidence by the prosecution, which is the medical report, which was affirmed by the expert witness, it needs to be decided on whether the medical report is a credible evidence to the prosecution case. So the medical report is an evidence stated about the condition of Nelly after she had been raped by the appellants. So the medical report was included as a documentary evidence, which was given to the court for inspection as a primary evidence because the report itself was produced, which is based on section 62 of the Evidence Act 1950. So in the case of KPM Hikmat Sendirian Berhad and Teh Kim Swee, so in this case, it stated about the rule of evidence where a documentary evidence was tendered, the primary evidence of the said documents must be adduced, except in cases under section 65, which stated about secondary evidence. So the medical report also became a corroboration evidence for Nelly's police report in order for her to prove that there is a sexual intercourse happened between her, Halim, and also Ah Chong. So the absence of this medical report may weaken the evidence adduced on the part of prosecution, as the condition of Nelly after being forced to have sexual intercourse cannot be verified in the court. Thus, under this matter, we can see that the medical report, which was affirmed with an expert witness, is a credible evidence in supporting the element of sexual intercourse that happened between the accused and also the victim. Next slide. So the medical report stated just now was also affirmed by an expert witness, which make it more reliable. Based on section 45, section 1 of the Evidence Act, it highlighted that opinions upon the point of persons, especially skill on certain areas, are relevant facts, and the person was said to be an expert witness.
No, Hafiza, next slide. Okay, we understand about medical report. Okay, now.
Okay, next we move to the second element to be proved under the case, which is there must be a penetration. So in applying the situation of Nelly to the second element under this case, to prove a rape had occurred, it can be said that there must be a penetration between Nelly, Halim, and also Ah Chong in order to satisfy that a sexual intercourse had happened between them. So in the case of Regina and Joseph lines, the penetration needed in a rape case may only be a slight penetration of the accused to the victim for the purpose of the definition of rape. So a slight penetration is enough to amount to an offence under section 375 B of the Penal Code, where it happened without the consent of the accused. So the evidence of genital pain suffered by Nelly after she woke up in a naked situation in the hotel room was adduced as one of the evidence of the prosecution. So the genital pain felt by her was said to be a circumstantial evidence that corroborate the police report made by her on a rape case. So this evidence may support the element of penetration that exists in this situation. This is because when she woke up, she found herself naked in the hotel room, where Halim and Ah Chong were also naked but was sleeping in the living room. This the genital pain felt by her can be a credible evidence to the prosecution, as it may prove that Halim and Ah Chong, who were in the same room, had forced a sexual intercourse with Nelly, and penetration also happened as she felt the genital pain when she woke up. So if the evidence of the genital pain was absent, the elements of penetration might not be happening, and it also cannot be proved that there are sexual intercourse happened that was forced by Halim and also Ah Chong. Next slide. To the next presenter.
Okay,
Right now.
Nurul Hidayah, before the next presenter present this subtopic number 3, can you refer to the penetration, to the slide presentation, penetration, Okay, Nurul Hidayah,
Tuan
sorry,
Nur
Nurul
Hafizah.
Nurul Hafizah,
Yes.
What happened if the penetration is using hand, not penis? Is it regarded as a rape?
No, I think it will be regarded as a sexual assault only.
Okay. Your authority? Your authority on this point? Do you have penal code with you? Nur Hafizah?
Can I help?
Hello.
Yes,
Husband?
yes, yes, you can. You may assist your friend, please.
Hello. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Is it car?
Do you have penal code with you?
Yes.
Can you refer to section 375-375A, B, C?
Yes.
Okay, can you share with your friend if there is an offense by Halim and Ah Chong penetrating into Nelly's vagina without their male's penis, but using their fingers. So they will be charged under which section of penal code?
Is it under section 377CA, where sexual connection by object and etc., where
Yes.
any person who has sexual connection with another person by the introduction of any object or any part of the body except the penis into the vagina or anus of other person without the other person's consent shall be punished with the imprisonment for a term of not less than 5 years and not more than 30 years, and shall also be liable to whipping.
So it is not fall under
It's not
offense
rape.
of rape.
It's unnatural offenses.
Yeah, okay, unnatural offenses. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Yeah, carnal intercourse okay, this is 377A and 377B. Okay, next slide, please.
So next, we proceed with the element number 3, where the sexual intercourse happened without the accused consent, where this was the definition of consent was mentioned in section 90 of the Penal Code, where any consent which is given under the fear of injury or misconception of facts, and the consent is given when the person is intoxicated or unsound mind, it is not considered as consent. And there was a case where, in the case of R against Camplin, where the man had given a drink that caused the woman to drunk, which made her give the man which the woman give the man consent to her body under hallucination, and it was considered as rape. So there are 3 evidence which was adduced by the prosecution that would amount to that Nelly do not give her consent to the accused, which is number 1, the complaint which was made by Nelly. It was adduced as evidence which rendered Nelly to not giving consent for any sexual intercourse happened to her. So in section 8, subsection 2 of the Evidence Act, where there are 2 types of conduct that could be adduced as evidence, which is prior and subsequent conduct. So the complaint was made subsequently after Nelly was raped, or Nelly there are signs of Nelly was raped. So it is a relevant evidence to be used in the prosecution case. And the second one is the CCTV footage, where the prosecution had rendered CCTV footage as an evidence, and should the evidence must show that Nelly, Ah Chong, and Halim had entered the hotel when Nelly was drunk. It is because when Nelly was drunk at that time, it shows that she is intoxicated, and any consent given by Nelly at that time would not be considered as legal consent, and any sexual intercourse happen during that time will be considered as rape. And the third one is the testimony from the security guard, where the prosecution had adduced this as a witness for this case, and the testimony must show that during the 3 of them entered the hotel, Nelly is indeed drunk at that time. the testimony from the security guard is considered as an oral evidence, where Section 3 had provided that oral evidence statements that the court required to be made before it by witnesses in relation to matters of facts under inquiry. So the prosecution must prove from the oral evidence where the guard must show that at that time Nelly and the three and Ah Chong and Halim is drunk at that time, and any consent given by Nelly at that time will not considered as legal consent. And the last element provided under the case of Ahmad Faizal Ali bin Aulad Ali, which is the accused and the victim must not be legally married. So in this case, the prosecution had established a prima facie case where the accused and the victim were not husband and wife at the time the sexual intercourse occurred. So in this case, Nelly only works in the nightclub while Ah Chong and Halim are only the customers that came to the nightclub. So there are indeed strangers in this case, and there are no proof provided by the prosecution that Nelly had married either with Ah Chong or Halim. So the fourth element is proven to Nelly, Ah Chong and Halim does not have any marriage relationship between them. So based on the evidence adduced by the prosecution and based on the maximum evaluation test applied to prove that there is a prima facie case made by the prosecution, so the prosecution had proved that the case is a prima facie case, and the defense shall enter into defense for their case. So that's all from question 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Okay, now let's proceed with the third question, which is what are the defenses that can be raised by Halim and Ah Chong? So the issue, next slide. Okay, the issue that we raised is whether there are possible defenses that can be raised by Halim and Ah Chong. So firstly, we will discuss on the failure to prove the prima facie, whereby there is reasonable doubt in the prosecution case. So the prosecution failed to fulfill the elements of rape under section 375 of the Penal Code, which is sexual intercourse by a man with a woman. And such intercourse falls under any of the circumstances laid down under section 375A to G. So for such elements to be proved, there must be sexual intercourse by a man with a woman. So we refer to the case of Siddiq bin Rudan against DP, where we can summarize the judge's statement that in order to establish the offense of rape, it is sufficient to prove that there is a penetration. So it is not necessary to prove the depth of the penetration. So even the slightest penetration will be sufficient to prove the offense of rape. So we move on to the next point, which is the authenticity of CCTV footage, where we refer to section 98(2) of the Evidence Act. So this section basically highlights the admissibility of documents produced by computers. And these two cases of Gana Segaran anak lelaki para Raja Singgam against PP and Ahmad Najib bin Aris against DP. These cases highlight the essential element of section 90A of Evidence Act, whereby the document produced by the computer must be in its ordinary use, and there is a need to support the evidence by providing certificate or oral testimony. So while the two cases of PP against Datuk Haji Saha Arpain and PP against Ong Cheng Kiong highlights the importance to bring the maker of the evidence who hold the responsibility to the operation or management. So therefore, failure to do so will make the evidence inadmissible.
So applying this principle of this case in our recent case, how you want to apply?
So in this case, the witness, which is the security guard, did not even hold the responsibility to the operation of the CCTV. So therefore, the second element of computer-generated document is not fulfilled, as the CCTV footage is not generated by a computer of its ordinary use. And also, the CCTV provided by the prosecution did not show any penetration or even the slightest penetration done by Halim and Ah Chong to Nelly.
Okay.
So
Next.
Moving on to the next to the next doubt to the prosecution's case, the authenticity of the DNA result.
Christina, can you put your mic near to your mouth?
Oh, okay, sir. Am I audible now?
Okay.
All right. Please move the slide to the authenticity of the DNA result. All right. So the defense raised a doubt to the authenticity of the DNA result, whereby the principle of the expert evidence, which is scientific is in nature, is mentioned in the case of Wong Swee Chin against public prosecutor, whereby Judge Raja Azlan Shah held that the court is compelled to accept scientific evidence, including DNA, unless the experts are not qualified and or they are rebuttal experts on the same issue. Next slide, please. All right. In the case of public prosecutor against Azman bin Ismail, the court held that the DNA result is inadmissible in law for the failure of the prosecution to prove the DNA test is conducted by a DNA expert. And one more point, whereby the failure of prosecution to comply with condition precedent for the admissibility of the computer printout as stated in the section 98 of Evidence Act. And the case of Rajiv Short against State, 1960, held that in any event, there must be evidence about competency to give expert evidence. Therefore, in applying to the current case, next slide, please. As there is no evidence by the prosecution that the DNA test is conducted by a qualified DNA expert to show the competency of the expert evidence, the court is not compelled to accept the DNA result, contrary to the case I mentioned before. Hence, it had cast doubt on the handling of the exhibits and the manner the test was carried out and the competency of the same. Consequently, DNA analysis, when considering the entire evidence of the DNA expert as to the actual role of the DNA expert, is questionable and leave much to be desired. All right, next. Other than that, on the issue of the CGD, computer generated document, there is no certificate or oral testimony tendered in evidence by the prosecution with regard to the admissibility of the DNA result, in order to show that the DNA result was produced by a computer in the ordinary course of its use and to comply with section 19A, section 2 of Evidence Act. Therefore, the DNA result of the statement of Halim and Ah Chong founded on Neil's genitals tendered by the prosecution is not of much assistance to the court to implicate the accused persons to the charge of rape without consent, as per the judge. All right, moving on to the next doubt to the authenticity of medical report. In the case, we refer to the case of Aparaf Satya against public prosecutor, whereby the High Court set aside the conviction and held that the doctor did not provide corroboration of the complainant's evidence that there was entry by a male organ. The medical report in that case stated that the fresh injury in the hymen was done by the entry of something, which is not the male organ. The doctor in his evidence stated that the complainant had told him that the appellant person only managed to put his finger in the private part and that he was another person who achieved penetration by male organ. Okay. And then we refer to this, we refer to the recent case, Punya Jalong against public prosecutor in 2015, whereby the appellant was charged for raping an underage girl, 8 years old girl, where the girl unfortunately gave birth to a baby boy, and the DNA evidence showed that the appellant was the father of the baby. The appellant alleged that he never had sexual intercourse with the victim, as he only inserted freshly ejaculated semen with his finger only, not his male organ, into the victim's vagina. Thus, his conduct does not fall within the legal definition of rape, which defines rape as penetration by the accused penis into the victim's vagina under certain non-consensual circumstances. Therefore, the Court of Appeal allowed the appellant's appeal and set aside the sentence.
Okay.
So in
Christina, so this case, Bunya Jalong's case,
yes,
let's say the court set aside the charge, against accused, but then can the prosecutor charge him for another offense, and under what category of the offense?
As I think it's on sexual assault. Right.
It's not sexual assault, it's sexual offense using object. Yeah, under section 377C, 377CA. Ya, perhubungan seks dengan objek, ya. Ya. 377CA of the Penal Code, ya. Okay. Okay, please proceed, Christina.
Next, on the last defense is the credibility of the witness, whereby from the security guard. So we refer to the section 60, subsection 1, paragraph E of the Evidence Act, whereby the order of evidence shall in all cases be direct, that is to say, if it refers to a fact which could be seen, it must be the evidence of a witness who says he saw it, and when an eyewitness is someone who observed an alleged crime in process. So therefore, in the current facts, the security guard only saw that Nelly, Halim, and Achong entered the hotel, not even the room. This is because the security guard logically usually will be located on the entrance of the hotel, and then they need to round the hotel, the lobby, surroundings of the hotel, the hallway of the hotel, but obviously not inside the hotel room. And even if the security guard saw them enter into the room together, of course he did not saw with his own two eyes the penetration by Halim and Achong personally, which is contrary to the section 60 I've mentioned. It is also possible that none of the security guard saw Nelly, Achong, and Halim entered the hotel, lest entered into the hotel room. Therefore, in conclusion, the possible defenses for Halim and Achong are the reasonable doubt on the penetration made by Halim and Achong towards Nelly, whereby there are reasonable doubts on the authenticity of CCTV footage, DNA result, medical report, and the credibility of the witness, which is the security guard. Therefore, as the prosecution failed to prove the prima facie of the case that Halim and Achong had committed rape without consent under section 375 subsection B of Penal Code, the conviction should be set aside. That's all from us. Thank you.
I think the conclusion is wrong. Can you read? Therefore, as the prosecution had failed to prove prima facie, not prima facie, at this level, after Halim and Achong being instructed to enter defense, it should be, therefore, as the prosecution had failed to prove beyond all reasonable doubt against Halim and Achong, then it should be set aside. It's not prosecution prima facie. Prima facie at the stage of prosecution case. This is defense case. Okay, thank you. Any more? Any of your friend want to continue with the presentation?
No, Tuan, it's all. Everyone has presented.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Syukur. Bagus. Very good. Do you have any queries, any question, or anything you want to share with me? Please feel free, feel convenient to share with me anything within 1 minute. No, okay. If you don't have any question or any recommendation, any suggestion or any comment, then we better end up our session tonight. We conclude by reciting Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Asr. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusrin illa allazina amanu wa 'amilus solihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Terima kasih.
Tuan.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.